The top 10 for the 1983 James Hardy 1000 here today at Mount Panorama. For pole position, 6 times winner is Peter Brock, his co-driver Larry Perkins in 05, the Marlborough Commodore. For position 2, car number 15 is the Nissan Turbo. The drivers are George Fury and Gary Scott. For position 3 is car number 3, Peter Jansen, and Tasmania's David Parsons. For position number 4, car number 31, Jim Richards and veteran Frank Gardner in the John Player BMW. For position 5 is car number 25, Johnny Harvey and Phil Brock in the Marlborough Commodore. For position 6, car number 22, Warren Cullen and Ron Harrop in a Commodore. From 7 is car number 11, Gary Rogers and Clive Benson Brown in a Commodore. For position number 8 is car number 6, pole sitter last year, Alan Grice and veteran Colin Bond. From 9 is car number 4, Rusty French and veteran Bobby Morris in a Commodore. And starting position number 10, the hard luck driver from yesterday, car 17, Dick Johnson and Kevin Bartlett. Well, they're up to what promises to be the fastest 1,000-kilometre sprint race around the mountain. You know, looking back over 21 years, racing has come a long way. And so has television's contribution to the sport and to this particular race.
In the James Hardy this weekend, you'll be seeing pictures from 3 camera-equipped race cars. The race cams in these cars are unique Australian high-tech developments which were awarded Emmys this year by the United States Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. This unique Australian development, including the 3rd camera, which is a unique race view system which we're testing today, we believe will be adopted eventually throughout the world as being essential to the coverage of motor races. You can't cover a motor race anywhere now without cameras in the cars, and I'm proud to say that this development was pioneered here at Bathurst.
Racecam is operated by a remote-controlled joystick. It can move in any direction and focus at incredible speed. The picture signal from the car is picked up by the Prudential helicopter, from where it is relayed down to our outside broadcast van, where director Phil Berry puts it to air.
I've been working with Channel 7 now 26 years, and with the advent of Racecam, we have a heck of a lot of fun. It's just brought this new dimensions right into the living room of your home. You can be with the driver right through the day.
Racecam has come a long way since 1979, when Sydney driver Peter Williamson buckled himself into a Toyota Celica and gave viewers their first televised ride around the mountain, along with some colourful dialogue.
There's that rotten Volvo, holding everybody up. What a joke.
Racecam technology has been refined since 1969. Present-day units now have 360-degree pan and tilt, while commentary from drivers has now reached the question and answer stage. With all the moving the camera does inside the car, you might think it would interfere with the driver's concentration, but that's not the case.
Well, I've had Racecam now, this is the 2nd year I would have had it, and last year I found it very comfortable to drive with it and to speak. Who knows what will come this year, because the race is probably going to be a lot harder and a lot faster, but I can assure you we'll do our best to please everyone.
Cars carrying Racecam have built up an enviable winning record over the past few years. Peter Brock took viewers to victory in last year's James Hardy 1000 here at Bathurst. In the United States, it was veteran Cale Yarborough who took out this year's accident-marred Daytona 500. His Grand National machine was Racecam equipped. While Racecam has been successful, it has also had a few lucky moments where the cameras have been removed from cars for maintenance or other commitments. Take, for example, Dick Johnson's ride on the wild side at Amaroo Park a few months ago, or Cale Yarborough's car-destroying flip in qualifying for the Daytona 500 in February of this year. And to mark the 21st anniversary touring car marathon here at Mount Panorama this weekend, meet the son of Racecam. It's RaceView, an innovative periscope camera which will travel with Jim Richards and Frank Gardner in their JPS BMW. RaceView's amazing wide-angle periscope lens will travel 10 centimetres above the BMW. It can also pan 360 degrees to bring you another spectacular view of the great race. So, between 3 turvy world of motor racing, a very few people, have made the transition from 2 wheels to 4. Jeff Surtees did it and was world champion on both forms of motorsport. Mike Hailwood did it less successfully because he was not world champion. On the local scene, Greg Hansford, who was 6 times Australian champion, has seemed to make the conversion fairly successfully. Greg, is it difficult to change from one form of racing to the other?
Not really difficult, Peter. I think the thing that's helped me a lot is that I've been to all the circuits before, and all I've had to do when I got in the car was try and learn how to drive the car instead of learning the circuit and all the other things that go with it. That was the biggest help.
In terms of machine performance, what's the difference in the feel? I mean, one obviously you lean over and the other one you don't, but tell us how it feels to drive the two different types.
Well, the Grand Prix bikes are much faster than the cars. Down the straight here, I think they're doing close to 190 mile an hour, where the car is a fair bit slower than that. But the car is a lot more faster around the corner. You can brake a lot later in the car, but your racing lines are very similar, and that's about all there is to it.
So in terms of braking, I mean, how much? What's the performance like and what's the variation in a motorcycle and a Mazda, for example, which is what you're driving now?
The car will stop a lot faster than the bike. I think we used to race here on the bikes, we were braking about the 400-yard marker, and now in the car we can get down under 300 yards.
Why is that, Greg? Is it just tyres and 4 brakes instead of 2?
Yeah, we'd have to say that. And also, the front wheel on a bike is, you probably have 1.5 inches to 2 inches of rubber on the ground, whereas if you've got two 10-inch rims on the front, you've got 20 inches of rubber on the road with the car, plus the back wheel. So that's where the biggest difference lies.
Do you prefer one or the other?
Well, I think I would prefer to drive the car now. The biggest thing in my mind was that I race motorcycles every weekend for 10 or 11 years, and after doing something so long, you need some sort of a change, and driving the car was a refreshing new challenge, so, you know, I'm really enjoying it.
Great. Greg, good luck this weekend. Back to Mike.
The STP Commodore is 23-year-old former motorbike racer Steve Harrington from Hobart. Partner, Tasmanian Garth Wigston. Position number 12, car 34, the first of the 2 Moffat Mazdas. This one driven by 31-year-old Greg Hansford. Co-driver is Gary Walden, the youngster who discovered himself at the Village Grand Prix. Position 13, 2WS-sponsored Falcon of Steve Masterton. Sharing the driving chores in this one-raced car is Bruce Stewart. On grid 14, car 43, to be driven by the man who's the same age, the ever-controversial Alan Moffat. Moffat's co-driver, Yoshimi Katayama, 6 times Japanese touring car champion, also 43 years old. Another Mazda fills position 15, car 37, to be driven by Amaru Park specialist Terry Shield. Riding shotgun will be Wally Story. Qualifying to start 16th is car 10, Terry Finnegan of Sydney. Co-driver, 38-year-old Jeff Leeds. 17 on the grid is car 12, another Commodore chauffeured by Victorian Jim Keogh. Co-driver is Kiwi Leo Leonard. Starting from berth number 18 is the number 16 Nissan Turbo. Freddie Gibson, one of a dozen former winners competing today. John French is the co-driver. Next on the grid, car number 50, entered by Peter McLeod. 4 years experience behind him. Co-driver is Graham Bailey, father of 5, embarking on his 5th Bathurst.
That's the scene here.
Rules governing the freedoms or modifications that can be made to these touring cars have been changed. In the last few months, the governing body of motorsport in Australia, CAMS, have announced a series of modifications to cars which have improved their performance, their handling and their braking. The changes have been announced piecemeal, and some have been highly controversial, particularly those that relate to the Mazda RX-7s. Last year, Moffat in the Mazda couldn't get within 2 seconds of the best Commodore times, but that hasn't stopped other drivers, 15 of them, including Murray Carter here, from joining the RX-7 camp, because this year's RX-7 is an entirely different beast. The big change to the motor. The Japanese coupe now has a new, bigger and more powerful 13B rotary engine with external or peripheral ports. And just before the Castrol 400 at Sandown, only 3 weeks ago, CAMS allowed the new engine to use fuel injection. Only Moffat's car had it for Sandown, and he won in a canter. Carter will use it here as well, and the fuel-injected, bigger engine Mazda is a different car to last year's RX-7. The car to gain the next greatest benefit is the Falcon. Last year, the big Fords floundered, mainly crippled by narrow tyres. Now they have huge wheels. The rear ones are 19 inches in diameter, and the brakes are larger. There's also more power, maybe an extra 30 horsepower, due to revised engine breathing, and the bolt-on aerodynamic aids have become larger to make sure those fat slicks stay on the bitumen. The Commodore's wheels don't look as spectacular as the Falcon's, but they too have grown in size, allowing the wide racing tyres to sit squarely on the road. Other changes to the racing Holden are bigger front brakes, beefed up front suspension struts, a new front air dam, and at the back of the car, a larger rear spoiler. BMW didn't get all the changes they would have liked, but even so, the alterations to the 635 CSI Coupe have certainly made it a potential race winner. The big changes are to the motor. The new rules allow BMW to fit their 24-valve cylinder head. That gives the 3.5-litre 6 4 valves per cylinder for greater efficiency and pushes horsepower up to around 400, almost as much as the 5-litre Commodore V8. The German car also gains better brakes, improved suspension and bigger wheels, the latter with a single hub locking system that should trim a few seconds from the time taken to change a wheel. Least favoured by the changes are the Nissan Bluebird turbos. The only alterations they've been allowed are to do with the turbocharger itself and the fact that they can now vary the boost. The reason these cars have done so well and have a real winning chance now is that since last year they've gone through an intensive program of race development, which has been so successful that this model, smallest in actual engine size and the only 4-cylinder among the outright contenders, come to Bathurst leading the point score for the Australian Endurance Championship, for which the James Hardy is the 4th round.
Thank you, Evan Green.
One woman driving in this year's James Hardy 1000, and there's only one married couple. Well, naturally, there's a common link, and that's Christine Gibson, who, with her husband Fred, will be driving for the Nissan team, not in the same car, but in different cars. Christine, how does it feel to be a teammate yet a rival to your own husband?
That's the only reason I'm here, not the rivalry bit. I joined the team because Fred was involved, and because Howard is a very good friend of both of ours and asked me to. It's exciting. It's enjoyable because we do enjoy doing it together. We don't only talk about motor racing when we're at home, though.
How do you feel about it, Fred?
Oh, I don't mind really, Evan. Christine's been driving long enough now, and I think I've accepted the fact that she likes doing that. So you can't stop people doing what they like if they get the opportunity. And she's been given the opportunity by Nissan to do it, so let's do it.
How would you feel if you saw Christine stopped on the side of the road?
As long as the car looked all right, Evan, I wouldn't really mind because I knew there wouldn't be any damage anywhere. But when you talk back to the, I suppose you go back to the accident of a couple of years ago, and I saw it down here when it happened, I knew the car was in one piece, and I had built that car in particular, and I knew she wouldn't get any sort of damage to the body at all. So that's really what worries me.
That was your last outing 2 years ago when you and Bob Morris were involved in that coming together that stopped the race. How do you feel about that in retrospect, and what do you recall of that incident?
It was worrying at the time, and I went through a lot of thought process over it. It took a little while, mainly because of outsiders asking questions about it all the time. I don't mean that directly to you, but you know, it's a psychological thing that keeps coming up all the time, so you have to come to grips with it straight away. It was an incident that happened, and I sorted it out in my own mind and was quite convinced about the whole thing, and it really has never worried me since. I've never had to think twice about it. When I went up the top this morning, there wasn't a physical thought process about going through the top of the mountain at all. I mean, I just didn't even think about that at all. Besides, I had too many other things to do at the time. It hasn't worried me. It worried my family, which worried me more than the accident itself.
Your 2 daughters?
They weren't particularly worried about the accident, but my parents in particular, and the responsibility at home with the 2 girls, that I had to consider as well. I know my own ability, and I didn't question it as far as the accident was concerned.
Christine Gibson, the only woman driving in the race, and with Fred, the only husband and wife team. Now it's back again to you, Mike.
I'm not much of a hand at computers. My son beats me out at Star Wars and Pac-Man every time. But when I get to Bathurst, I soon learn to appreciate what the computer can do for me when I learn to work with it and don't try to beat it. Texas Instruments have provided the system that will monitor, record and time the laps of all the cars throughout today's great race. The Business System 800 computer is the central unit, linked with a PM550 industrial controller, a number of 6MT industrial modules, and 60 switches, one for each car, arranged in banks of 10. On every lap of the race, as each car approaches the start-finish line, a spotter calls out its number. Then the switch operator sights the car and actuates the switch as the nose of the vehicle crosses the line. The PM550 continuously monitors those switches, notes the lap time and informs the Texas Instruments 800 computer. The computer compares the time with an average lap and the best practice times of the car in question. If the lap recorded is impossibly quick or excessively slow, it's brought to the attention of operating staff for checking. So, the number of laps and the times for each and every car in the James Hardy 1000 are continuously processed and recorded simultaneously by 2 complete systems. And progress reports on the race can be sent to any one of 5 printers installed around the circuit and to various video terminals. The Texas Instrument System also continuously monitors inquiries from the Channel 7 computer and immediately relays the requested information. The 7 computer then reformats that data using a video character generator for display on your television screen. All of those tasks are completed in seconds, over and over again, thousands upon thousands of times throughout the day, so that both you and I can keep track of who's in front of whom and how far they've gone and how fast they're going in the great race. Got to admit, that's pretty amazing stuff. Now, if they could just dress this computer in one of these red jackets, I could take the day off. But right now, we'll take a break.
Coming down on the approach to Conrod Straight, Johnson goes out wide, clips the back, pulls the front round, and then disappears in between trees. How he walked away from that accident, we'll never know. The car totally destroyed. However, Johnson was able to scramble out of the car, and that was what was left of Dick Johnson's Falcon, the green car that everyone said might be just a little bit unlucky. Well, the story has unfolded. Evan Green last night stayed on to report at midnight on Dick Johnson's plans to race today.
They say Dick Johnson fans are the most loyal in Australia. Well, here's a demonstration. We're in the last minutes of Saturday night. And look at the crowd behind me on this cold Saturday. What are they watching? Well, they're watching an effort which, if it succeeds, will be one of the miracles of Mount Panorama. Dick Johnson's crew are trying to rebuild car 9 into car 17. Let me now talk to the man in charge of preparation, George Shepherd. Can you do it, George?
Oh, we'll give it a big shot, Evan.
How many hours work in all?
To do what we're doing, right the way up to the start line, I reckon. Yeah.
What are the hardest things?
Well, the hardest thing is that you're trying to do so many things in such a small area with so many people, I suppose. But you're taking a motor car and we're trying to introduce into it all the development that we've found in our car over a whole year, in Dick's car, into a car that's a year old and hasn't had any development since.
It's now around midnight, it's getting colder, and Dick Johnson has turned up. Dick, you must be moved by all this, the fans out there, the fans in here.
Evan, that's Bathurst, I think, and I think that's the dedication that we have in all the guys that work for us. They're just such a great bunch of guys.
Are they going to finish?
Mate, they'll work until they drop. That's how they go. They'll finish the car in some sort of order, and hopefully it'll be good enough to do the job tomorrow.
Are you going to bed?
Oh, we'll get to bed sooner or later.
You're not going to have the chance to drive this car before the flag drops. What sort of chance does that give you?
Well, we'll just hope that the guys get everything, you know, in the right shape when they put it in the car, because you only get one shot, and they know what it's like getting one shot, so I'm sure that they'll do the right thing.
Across the top of Mount Panorama, the fans wait to see what sort of a shot Dick Johnson can give it in today's great race. The build-up continues when we return to Mount Panorama of 1983. And to make the presentations of the checks, those vital checks to the pole winners, I'd like to introduce to you the General Manager of ATN Channel 7 in Sydney, Mr. Ted Thomas.
Thank you very much, Gary. Well, the pole position this year was won by Peter Brock, and this is Peter's 6th time on pole after winning the race itself 6 times. A marvellous performance. He came right out of the dark. We thought of other performers getting on pole position, but we were wrong, and here he is, Peter Brock. Peter, 7,000 from Channel 7 and 3,000 from Schweppes, your 10,000 first prize for pole.
Thank you very much, Ted, and it's a very, very difficult position, this Hardy's Heroes, because you've got to go in the race the next day, and I think it was most unfortunate, particularly for all your Ford fans out there, that Dick Johnson had such a problem yesterday, and I really mean that. But then again, the $10,000 makes it worth the risk, I guess. And I'm very, very glad, really, on behalf of all the lads in our team to have won it this year. We had a bit of a problem last year, but so far so good. This year the car's going like a rocket.
Well, all the best for today.
Thank you very much, Ted.
Peter, don't go away for just a moment. There is it's not a monetary reward, but there is a small reward from the Bathurst Festival.
And of course, there are still some cars to show you, and there it is. You're not going to believe it. Overnight, car number 17. It's a new car. It's not the one crashed yesterday. You wouldn't know the difference. Dick Johnson, and a huge roar goes up from the crowd here at Mount Panorama. Just look at the rival crews, all waving to Dick Johnson, and a tremendous atmosphere here at Mount Panorama. As Johnson takes his place in the field, let's have a look at the cars that will start from positions 41 to 50. And here he is, and just look at the marshals around the circuit and the spectators up on top of the mountain giving him such a tremendous cheer. This will be a corner that Dick might treat just a little bit gingerly today. This is where he had the problem yesterday, hit those tyres, the back of the car got into the wall, but Dick Johnson has made the starting grid for the 1983 James Hardy 1000. And that's the only practice he's going to be able to get in the car before the start of the race today. And when Johnson pulled out onto the racetrack, he got an absolute hero's reception as he came onto the circuit and took up the run to the top of the mountain. I think everyone across Australia, and certainly all our Queensland viewers watching today, our telecast of the James Hardy, are pleased to see this man in the field for the 1983 race. He's coming up now behind the cars. We'll probably get an idea now. Onto the grid now, and to Evan Green.
Did Gary say 5-2 Alan Moffat? Well, Alan Moffat, the first time I can recall you're not in the top 10, but speaking to the drivers up front, they all pick you as the man to beat. How do you feel about that?
I think they're overly concerned.
Well, you've got such a reputation that everyone says you're foxing, that practice was not your true form.
Yes, well, Evan, they said we were foxing when we won the Touring Car Championship. For the benefit of the people that do follow us at home, I would like to make it very clear that every time we start our Peter Stuyvesant RX-7, we started to win. Sometimes we're on the front of the row, sometimes we're back a bit, but I've never been an advocate of cruising around, putting on a poor performance, whether we're in Symonds Plains, Perth, Adelaide, or Surfers, to get a better deal at CAMS. And we've worked very hard all year. We've got a great team that have put a tremendous amount of effort into our car. And we had a few little setbacks in the week, and we didn't qualify as well as we want. Now, if the fellows in front of me are worried about that, well, that's my good luck, isn't it?
You happy with the car now?
I've got an extremely good car. It's the best car we've ever had. Just a few development problems with the 13B, and the fuel injection seemed to have some kind of a animosity with the mountain. So we're not too sure that we've got the best performance that we really would like to have.
The one thing that we can be sure of is Alan Moffat will give it the very best performance that Alan Moffat, 4 times winner, the ruling national touring car champion, can give. Over to you, Peter Werrett.
Thanks, Evan. Bob Morris did not have a drive at Bathurst. Now he's not only going to drive, he's actually in the top 10. Bob, how did you do it?
Well, it was, I guess it was one of those comedy of errors sort of thing where we were, I was walking past Alan Brown and they were having a few problems and asked me if I'd like to step into the car for a few laps, and that's how it all evolved. So here we are, and we're in number 9 grid position right beside Dick Johnson, and the car's quite good, and I think we're in there with a show.
You didn't even have to buy the drive. You just said, would you like to have a few rides?
Well, Alan Brown's like that. You know, he's a good sportsman, and he stepped out of the drive himself to allow me to run the car.
He said last year he wouldn't drive here again and suddenly came back. It looks as if his predictions about himself's come true.
Probably is, yeah. He might be a fortune teller or something.
How does the car feel, Bob?
It feels quite nice. I've been out of it for so long that it's taken me a few laps to sort of get into the groove, and it'll probably take me a few laps in the race to settle down a little, and we're taking it to try and finish, not try and lead the race.
Good on you, Bob. Thanks very much for talking to us. Back to Evan.
Thank you very much. Well, I've just paid the penalty for being a bit enthusiastic. I leant on Dick Johnson's car. I'm covered in green paint. It's as fresh as that, Dick. But how is it mechanically?
Mechanically is one thing. It feels like a bit of a dog, but I suppose I've ridden a few dogs in my time, so we'll just do the best we can with it, Evan.
Are you likely to come into the pits fairly early on if there's some problem just to get it tuned up and sorted out, or what sort of tactics do you propose?
Well, just after a couple of laps I did, the carburettor seems to be playing up, and if we have a problem in the early laps, I'll just call in and put another carburettor on it.
Whether you win or not, this must rank as one of the great efforts here at Mount Panorama.
Well, you know, it's only due to the fact that our guys are just so good that they'll work till they drop, those blokes.
You're doing it for Queensland too, aren't you?
Queensland and all the people out here and my sponsors.
Dick Johnson. Win or not, I think he's proved himself to be a real champion here at Bathurst. Okay, Peter Wirth, who have you got now?
Thank you very much, and a very emotional Dick Johnson that Evan has to talk with.
George Fury, congratulations on a great lap time. Now, can you maintain that sort of speed for the race, and how much will you have to come off?
Well, we obviously can't maintain that speed. I think if we come back to about a 20 or maybe a 21, but that won't be quite so easy to do because we expect that the V8s are going to gobble us up the mountain straight after the start. And even though we're quicker than those V8s behind us anyway, we're quicker up the mountain and down the mountain, and they're quicker down the straight. So it'll be very hard for us to pass any of them. So we'll just have to persevere with all that and do our best.
Are you going to attempt to keep those guys in sight for the whole race, or are you just going to let them run their own race and do the same thing yourself?
I think what I'm going to have to do is just run my own race, be as far up in the front as I can after a couple of laps, and then just settle down and run my own race, and hopefully later on in the race their tyres will go off a bit.
George, good luck. Here's Mike.
Thank you very much, Peter Wirth.
Thank you, Gary. On behalf of the Australian Racing Drivers Club, I'd like to welcome you all to Bathurst, and I ask, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
And there you can hear the engines beginning to turn over. We're only a few electric moments away from the start of the 1983 Great Race, the James Hardy 1000 from Mount Panorama here at Bathurst. You can really feel the atmosphere, yes, and the tension starting to build.
Yes, the light relief as a bunch of balloons flick across the screen there and fill the sky in the background. People scramble from the grid, a hectic scramble now as the mechanics, team managers, last-minute advice shouted, doors slammed, drivers strapped in, everything's checked, set to go, engines running.
A few of them reluctant to leave their cars, maybe just a little bit concerned about the cars themselves. I noticed that Larry Perkins stayed with Peter Brock for a long time, but gradually the grid area is being cleared.
And yet nobody around the Dick Johnson Falcon.
Well, it's too wet to get too close.
Maybe the paint will peel off as they rip up Mountain Straight the first time if it's that wet.
Let's hope he drives out there long enough for the paint to dry. Well, there's Dick. Goodness knows what thoughts are going through his mind. He's had very little sleep. His crew have had none. They're now facing an exhausting day. But the adrenaline is pumping. You can see the green car back there in 10th spot on the grid. Cars to watch. Brock on the right of your screen. Been fastest all week. Alongside him is George Fury with the turbocharged Nissan. We could expect it won't be quite as fast off the line. Turbos don't get away as much as the V8, so he may be engulfed by someone like David Parsons or a Jansen, actually. Peter Jansen starting in car 3, the yellow car. He'll be out for a quick go and he'll be aiming at the slot alongside the car in pole position. Jim Richards in the big black BMW. It too being a rather heavy car, maybe a little slow away. And you've got John Harvey and Warren Cullen right behind in big V8s, ready to go for that first corner. It could be very crowded, Gary.
Gary Rogers and Alan Gross right behind them too. I mean, those two guys just don't know how to go slow. So the first corner is going to be the devil to pay. That's why they call it Hell Corner.
Bobby Morris and
1 minute.
Dick Johnson side by side. But these are the men we're just talking about further back in the third row of the grid. John Harvey. What a popular victory it would be if the veteran second driver in the Holden dealer team could score here today at Mount Panorama. Never has won here. In the last few tenths seconds ticking by. Engines pumping. George Fury in the white car in the middle of your screen.
30-second board is out.
Oh, and there's a slight creep by Brock's car.
Jansen too.
Jansen follows. He has clutches. Not starting to slip, just nervous left feet.
The 7 Network welcomes you to the 1983 James Hardy 1000 from Mount Panorama at Bathurst. The flag ready to be raised. The start of the great race is 10 seconds away. Racing in the 83 James Hardy Classic. Peter Brock in the 05 car off the inside gets away smartly, but Fury comes up with him. Jansen has been outgunned on the inside by John Harvey, who'll move to third for the first time. Jim Richards then coming back on the inside of Peter Jansen. There's Dick Johnson making a good start too. They head up Mountain Straight for the first time, and we have a safe first corner as they head up to GTX Bend.
Well, they all got through that first bend safely, and that's worth breathing a deep sigh of relief about. And for the first 163 times, up the mountain they go. George Fury holding on to second place, but it's Peter Brock who leads the mountain. In third place, it's his teammate John Harvey, and the BMW of Jim Richards has shouldered his way past Peter Jansen to take up fourth spot. Jansen's back there in fifth. He'll be happy with that place. Dick Johnson going well in the big green Falcon. Brock for the first time up towards the cutting. Right out brushes the weeds. It won't be the first car to take a few tips of Pass Balaam off them. There's Johnson now in the green car coming through. Oh, and what a great effort to get that car to the start line. Let's just keep our fingers crossed, hope and pray that he can keep the car going. Bobby Morris in car number 4, sweeping across the top of the mountain. This is an undulating, nightmarish roller coaster ride into McPhillamy Park for the first time, and listen for the crowd cheering as they see Peter Brock in the lead. Brock goes sweeping down towards the dipper. Richards close up there in that group running in for the second spot. That's Richards in the black car, lifts the wheel. My heavens, he's quick through there. Morris going well. And Brock then will be the first car onto Conrod Straight.
Richards, I notice, already trying to look for a way through. John Harvey in third and fourth positions, but Brock has got a break on them as he heads down Conrod Straight. The first time by G. Fury did get a remarkable start, but Brock has left him lagging just a fraction now as the big V8 up front puts the horses down on the ground. What a tremendous start. One car, should mention, failed to get away off the line with all the others. That was car 32, Mazda RX-7, Johnny Walker and Gene Cook. And that car retired, pushed behind the pits. A dismal day for those guys. Here we go, into the corner. First lap coming up, and it's Peter Brock in pride of place.
Along the pit straight, there's the field. Peter Brock, the 05 Marlboro Commodore, leads lap 1 of the 83 Classic. John Harvey making up the second, and trouble for the Nissan team. George Fury's car is slowing, heading along pit straight, and the rest of the field are going by it on the inside. Here's George Fury, car 15, being passed by Grayson, Warren Cullen and Dick Johnson, the next one back behind him. So troubles already for the Nissan team as they head up Mountain Straight again. Peter Brock starting to stretch his lead. There's Fury as we give you a race cam, and what a great disappointment it must be for George Fury, who is slowing down, heading up Mountain Straight, and you can see the rest of the cars going by.
He could scarcely have chosen, if that's the right word, a worse place to have trouble. He'd just gone past the entry to the pit. Now he has to do a whole lap with a car that's going very slowly, maybe doing damage to itself, and George Fury will limp around trying to cover that lap, and he'll lose minutes before he gets back to his pits. 6.172 kilometres is the distance around, and for George Fury, it's going to be the longest 6 kilometres of his life. Alan Grice sweeping through on the way up the mountain.
And also problems with the BMW being passed as well. On the inside, Dick Johnson has already passed Jim Richards, moving up, and so too is Steve Masterton. Alan Moffat has also moved up as well, so problems already for the BMW team. Peter Brock across the top of the mountain, running strongly out in the lead. Fast qualifier here on Friday, backed up to take pole spot in Hardy's Heroes yesterday.
What an awful feeling for George Fury. Almost a repeat of last year's circumstance when mishaps occurred and he just failed to go very far in the race at all. And it looks like the same thing may be happening again.
Yes, he said in 1982 the worst moment of his racing career was that first lap when he saw the temperature skyrocket and knew he wasn't going to finish. We'll find out what the trouble is. Peter Werritz in the pits. Certainly we'll have George Fury going to the pits, and Peter will report on just what the problem is when he gets in. In the meantime, here's race cam. That's from the top of the BMW. Race view, the new periscopic view as they go down through the S's towards Forest Elbow. Hold on to your living room chairs. The fence that Dick Johnson hit, he went into the trees on the right there. How would you like to visit those trees at 160? That's what Dick did yesterday. He's in the race, running in 11th place. The big Chevy Camaro, the only American V8 in the race, goes by. The car that Bergman and Tony Longhurst, the young Queenslander, are driving.
Race view is working fine, but the BMW, Evan, is in trouble, definitely. It's just not keeping pace now.
No, he'll be coming to the pit surely, I would think, because he's being passed by cars that he should be well and truly ahead of. You can see a Mazda, then a Commodore screaming by. Falcon, 3 cars there. Yes, they're all going by. Certainly, as he goes through here, he'll have to come into the pits. So 2 of the leading contenders, 2 of the 4 cars on the front 2 rows of the grid in strife. Jim Richards will certainly keep well to the left and be the second car to head in towards pit row.
Here's Jim Richards coming into the pit area now as we pick up on Peter Brock through GTX Bend. Richards making an unscheduled pit stop. They obviously have a problem. The car has been off the pace since lap number 2. Brock stretches it. Teammate Johnny Harvey looking good out there, running in second place as they come through BP cutting. And there's the gap between first and second. Peter Brock out front and leading the James Hardy for 83. Seems accustomed to that, seeing he was leading the James Hardy 82 right down to the checkered flag.
Well, that's the perfect sort of position for the team, 1 and 2, and Peter Brock loves to run from the front. He can then set the pace that he likes, drive at a pace that he knows the car can sustain all day, and that's bad news for those behind. So Brock's in front, his teammate Johnny Harvey behind. Good news for the fans up top, but those who support the Fords, and there are an enormous number of them, have still got something to cheer, because Dickie Johnson is still going, and he'll be spending a few relatively slow laps as we, down on the pits, see George Fury drive to the back for some fairly heavy work. So the Nissan Bluebird Turbo in strife.
2.5 laps completed. It's 0-5. Peter Brock in front of teammate Johnny Harvey in car 25. We saw the Holden Precision Driving team earlier. This looks like a repeat. Alan Grice is in 3rd spot at the present time, and Gary Rogers 4th. So it's Commodore, 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 Commodore.
And is this the way the race is going to shape? The race we thought to be the most open in years, with 5 makes with winning chances. At the moment, 2 of them are disappearing, both in the pits. The BMW and the Bluebird Turbo have called in. George Fury gone to the back of the pits for fairly heavy work.
Hubbard and Fanico are in the pits.
Yes, that's another foul. It's a
car 40 of Falcon, yes, trouble for them as Brock comes down to the bottom of Conrad and into Murray's corner. The left-hander brings him over the start-finish line at the end of lap number 3. Only 160 laps to go.
Peter Brock across the strike and stretching his lead over second-placed John Harvey. Alan Grice moves to 3rd. Gary Rogers in 4th place, 100 metres, then back to Wixton. And next is Bob Morrison, car number 4.
A lot of pressure being put on John Harvey for second place by Alan Grice. He's right up on the tail. Alan, who crashed early in practice, had the car rebuilt.
We take you race cam now inside the number 17 Prudential Palmer car. That, of course, is Dick Johnson. Hasn't called to the pits, had a carburation problem, as he mentioned, on the warm-up lap. And there you see it, heading up to GTX Bend. The race driver is Queensland's favourite son, and that is Dick Johnson. Let's go to the pits and to Peter Warren.
A very sad and dejected Jim Richards, sitting very quietly and very patiently in the pit area. The BMW has had some considerable problems. He's running on just see exactly what that problem is. We'll just see if we can get a word with Jim. Can you tell what?
Well, I don't really down the Conrad straight for the first time. It got 5.
Okay, I think we might leave Jim Richards there because they're working on the car. We pick up with the action across the top of Mount Panorama. There's the number 25 car, John Harvey, running in second place, and maybe it's Gricey, who's gone up 1 slot to move to second. Let's wait and see. Coming down through the dipper. Yes, Alan Grice has moved to second. So Peter Brock leads the field. Alan Grice for STP in second place, and John Harvey in the second of the dealer team cars in 3rd place. They're followed by Gary Rogers in the Soundwave Disco's car. Oh, internal hemorrhage. The Kraft Smith Ford Capri. Now it's a tyre.
It's causing a lot of smoke, whatever it is that's pumping smoke out there, and that's going to be another visitor to the pit if he can only get around. It's a great effort by Gricey to get up there. He crashed in practice, really badly damaged the car. The mechanics worked all night to rebuild it. Went out in Hardy's Heroes yesterday. Couldn't go in the first outing because the steering was jamming. Went out the second time, and with a car that was handling in a very peculiar fashion, still managed to qualify his car in 8th place, and now he's up there running in 2nd spot. There he is. John Harvey made up a bit of ground in that time, but look at Gary Rogers enjoying a tow down the straight, and the Victorian, who really is one of the underrated stars of this meeting, would like to slip by John Harvey and put his car into 3rd spot. And there he goes. No, he says, there's not really the room there yet, but I think I can get by maybe in a little while. Let's see then, Gary Rogers sitting behind. He can't afford to stay too long, too close. While he does get an aerodynamic tow, he'll be losing cooling air through the radiator. You can see the actual gap. He's just still in the slightly ruffled, low-pressure air area behind John Harvey's car. Harvey trying to break the tow, but Rogers hanging on. And there he goes on the inside now, making a move to try and pass Harvey, but Harvey says that's my line, and it must have gone precariously close to touching as they come swinging up towards the climb to the cutting, towards the steepest part of the course. 1 in 6 is the grade here. Some of the drivers with a full tank of fuel snatch first gear here. Most of them go around in second.
Through the cutting. Alan Grice, presently placed in second. John Harvey, 25 in third. Gary Rogers in the fourth place. Our chopper shot showing you the cars coming across the top of the mountain with Peter Brock still stretching that lead and doing it rather comfortably. This scrap has been going on for the last lap and a half with Grice trying to run away from John Harvey. Harvey catches him up in parts of the circuit, and then Grice manages to pull away again.
Another car in the pits, by the way, Mike. That's the Graham Moore King George's Tavern Falcon. It's in the pits, so the pits are almost as busy as Pit Straight.
Alan Moffat, who started from 14th position on the grid, is now running 9th.
Well, some of the people have been predicting that Moffat will take the lead about lap 39 or lap 40. They've been as specific as that. Let's see if they're coming through. Car 40 going by, the one we saw in the pits a little while ago. Another of the Falcons. That's the James Finico one going very, very slowly out on the track.
And so the Donnelly and Bailey Falcon is in the pits as well, so it's not been a great day for Henry so far.
Well, he still has Dick Johnson out there with his freshly painted, brand new rebuild. There's some more action in the pits there. 29, John Donnelly, the Falcon XD, the older model. Front car going on, but out on the track. The scrap for third place has been resolved with Gary Rogers having displaced John Harvey. John might be too unhappy. He knows it's a long, long race, and a half a second or quarter of a second or whatever the distance between them doesn't mean much. Just puts his car out on the side to get a bit of cooling air through, then slots back in behind Gary Rogers, and he'll follow him around, I would think, for a while, unless he finds that Rogers isn't quite maintaining the pace he would like. But Alan Grice is in front of the scrap. This is the battle for second place. Brock is out in front. Alan Grice has a lead of maybe 30 metres. You see him coming up over the crest as they come up Mountain Straight. Past one of the smaller cars.
Past the Audi there, is higher. There's Alan Grice, car number 6. Car 43, Alan Moffat, making a move up to 8th. And 34, teammate Greg Hansford moving to 12th. There's Gricey, though, followed by Gary Rogers. The race starting to settle down quite early with Brock in control of the ship up front.
And Moffat lurking.
Well, Brock has a tremendous record of being able to control his wings from the front. One interesting point is that the dealer team are not operating on two-way communication for this race. They're doing it with the signals of the cars, using headlights and blinkers, and they've found it to be more effective.
There's a ban on the use of certain radios here as well, which has caused some of the teams to adjust their thinking. In other races, they do have two-way communication, not here.
First 7 places in the race at the moment held by Commodores, followed by Mazda, Commodore, Datsun and 2 Falcons.
And that Mazda, Alan Moffat, started from 14th place behind his teammate Greg Hansford, the 6 times Australian motorcycle champion, who really is one of the defines of four-wheel racing. We thought he'd be good, and he's just proving how good he is. Worth watching as the race progresses. He'd be under fairly strict orders to run to set times, not to punish the car, to be there at the finish, and hopefully to put the car up there in a very high position. Well, Alan Grice is sprinting. I don't think he knows any other way of driving. He'll hand over to one of the most experienced co-drivers in the game, Colin Bond. And that's a good combination, Alan Grice and Colin Bond.
Across the line again, Alan Grice in second place. Gary Rogers in 3rd place, and back behind him is John Harvey, of course, in the second of the dealer team cars. That's car number 25.
Another car in the pits, Commodore, Gary Hinton and Lester Smerton. This is the car that's painted up like a Queensland Highway Patrol vehicle, but somebody's put the flag out and pulled them into the side of the road. A great race is in progress, and we'll return to it in just a moment. The start-finish line to complete yet one more lap in the James Hardie 1000 for 1983. Started off 14th position on the grid and is now up to 8th with a flock of Commodores, 7 of them in fact in front of them. Let's check the win scoreboard. The top 10 positions in the race thus far. The Brock Perkins Commodore leads the way from Grice and Bond, Rogers and Benson Brown, Harvey and Phil Brock, Harrington and Wigston.
Position number 6, Cullen and Harrop, yet another Commodore. French and Bobby Morris, a Commodore. Now Moffat, Katayama, Mazda RX-7, Jansen and Parsons in the Commodore, and Gibson and French in the Nissan Turbo. Well, the Nissan team will be happy to see that up there in the top 10 after the mishap to George Fury. That car pushed off behind the pits after completing but one lap in the race, then slowing right along pit straight at the end of one lap with an enormous amount of traffic around him. George Fury really must be disheartened because he hardly completed more than that in the race last year, if my memory serves me correct. And it'll be a disappointment. But with Fred Gibson and John French in the second of the Nissan cars, both so vastly experienced men.
Both drivers who've won the race in the past. John French only 2 years ago with Dick Johnson, but Freddie Gibson way back in 1967 with Harry Firth when they first put a Falcon GT onto the Victor's dais here at Mount Panorama. But this is Alan Moffat, the man who's won 4 times, but not since 1977 when he drove for Ford. He's been pioneering the cause for Mazda for a number of years, and that's a pretty hard and a pretty lonely path for a person to follow. But he's been dedicated to it. He is certainly the leading exponent of Mazdas in the race, and there are 16 of them altogether. Moffat, though, who qualified a fairly lowly 14th. I can't recall the last time he was out of the top 10. Now, right up there among the leading group, running in 8th place.
The car that has the backing of the South Australian town of Gawler is in the pits, I'm afraid. The Commodore, number 38, Bernie Stack and Bob Jennings. The boot is up, the bonnet is up, and I don't know whether the driver's, yes, he's still in the car, but they've got trouble as we continue to follow Alan Moffat, the man who's running a low 0.5. Peter Brock is in the pits.
Well, one sensation after another in this race. The leader of the race coming in very slowly, too. Just crawling into the pit area, the mechanics hustling around to find out what's wrong. They're putting fuel in. Anyhow, that's automatic. Larry Perkins, the co-driver, adopts the role of team manager, says, what's the trouble? They've got the bonnet up. It's something up front. He's looking up front there as well. They're still refueling the car. That's just automatic. They won't worry about tyres. Peter's getting out, so it's going to be a long stop. Otherwise, he wouldn't leave the car. So it's a long stop for Peter Brock then. Something
drastically wrong.
That's right. It's a fundamental problem for Peter to get out and see what it is. He came in very slowly. He's looking around. We'll see if we can get Peter Werrett down there just to find out what's going on. But at the moment, it's a fairly crowded scene. Peter's got one glove off, keeping the helmet on, but he's anticipating a fair stay there.
In earnest conversation.
Well, I wonder what Dick Johnson is thinking, seeing all the fast ones up front dropping out. There's been George Fury in the Bluebird Turbo. There's been Jim Richards. Off comes the helmet. There's been Jim Richards in the BMW. Now Peter Brock moving to the side, getting into the shade, undoing the buckle on his helmet. Hasn't quite taken it off, but he's certainly thinking, I'm going to be here for a while. I'll get out of the sun. And there's the Manson brothers Commodore, the fellows from Gippsland, who've parked it in a place where they won't extract it easily down at the off-run. You can see at the top of the mountain, they've gone straight ahead. So the Mansons are out, and it looks like Brock is out as well. They're certainly pushing the car away. The mechanics think it's going to manhandle it and take it behind the pits into the garage area and work on it there.
This puts Moffat in 7th place now, behind Grice, Rogers, Harvey, Cullen, Harrington and Grice.
Let's go down now to Peter Werrett.
Not much doubt about what's happened to Peter Brock. There's a very large lump of oil lying around down here, puddles of it everywhere. And quite obviously at the end of the straight there was this great cloud of blue smoke came from the car, and it's quite apparent that he's blown an engine or blown a gasket of some kind, probably around about the sump area. They're away now trying to fix it up, but the point is that this pit area has never been so busy in the history of a Hardy Ferraro before in the first 15 laps. Brock's just another one of those people who've had problems. All the top contenders have now had troubles, with the possible exception of Dick Johnson, who's just out there going round and round. Good luck to him.
Thank you, Peter Werrett. Here's Alan Moffat.
He's still going round and round too.
Hasn't had to pass too many at the moment. They've all been dropping out in front of him.
Well, the leaderboard is showing drastic changes. These are the cars scrapping for the front. The man in front by 2 seconds is Alan Grice. Then car 11, which is Gary Rogers from John Harvey in car 25, the second of the Holden dealer team cars. Then it's 22, car number 22, Warren Cullen from Victoria, another Commodore. Car 14, running next, that's the Steve Harrington from Tasmania, second STP Roadways car. And car 4,
Bobby Morris in the Falcon, just ahead of Alan Moffat, the man we're watching there, who's now running in 7th position.
15 minutes gone in the race, 9 laps completed, and the BMW is still not back out on the track.
There's someone stopped on the track. There's a service car with a little Pulsar X's there with lights flashing to warn drivers there's something ahead, and Moffat going very fast on that close inner line. I was terrified there might be a pickup truck there. There's not. Moffat gets through. He's going around fairly quickly there. He's got Jansen behind and doesn't want him to close up.
If it's the turbo Pulsar, it must be Christine Gibson.
No, the Pulsar is the course car. Yeah, they've got their heroes. Yes, Christine Gibson in car 60, the only woman in the race driving with Bobby Muir. She's still out there and circulating. The way things are going, she could win the race. We're having the stars drop out.
I hope not. Not at the price I had her on my board.
Oh, would you stand to lose a lot, Gary? Peter Jansen. Peter's dropped back a long way. He was 3rd in the early stages.
Dearie me, and one's just gone into the wall up there at the top of the mountain, not far from where, now, of course, Dick Johnson.
Yes, no, he's gone in very heavily in front. The question is, as the driver gets out, he's a bit shaky, but okay. Did one of the RX-7s, did the wheel come off before he hit the fence, or did he hit the fence and knock the wheel off? We saw the wheel roll away from the car and wander across the track and then come back clear of the circuit. But the front of the car has taken a heavy thump there, coming out of Forest Elbow, very close to the spot where Dick Johnson went. He touched the tail of the car there yesterday and hit that pile of tyres with the front of the car and broke the wheel.
I think that's the fire-safe entry. We'll give you details in a second, but the driver is out of the car.
And feeling pretty bad about it all. He's done a lot of damage to the car, as you can see, and he's out of the race, and that's a position that's going to slow the field down. The marshals around the circuit waving their flags to warn the oncoming drivers that there is a hazard there, and this will certainly cause a drop in lap times because it's critical as cars come through here. They have a fast pace down the straight, and still the cars come pouring into the pits. Car 36, Jerry Burgess, who's driving with the American Roger Vanderbilt in the Mazda RX-7.
Burgess heads towards the pit area, pulls in. So there's been frantic activity in the pit area. But this man, who had his problems on Friday, having to rebuild this car overnight and make qualifying yesterday for the top 10, but Alan Grice did it early in the 82 James Hardy 1000, then spun off at the end of Conrod Straight. At the moment, though, he is in front and leading lap number 10 across the top of the mountain. Gracie driving for STP out there in front and looking good at this stage.
6.1 seconds ahead of John Harvey, and realise, of course, that from the start he dropped into 4th slot behind Johnny Harvey. Has got past Harvey. Of course, we've had George Fury fall out of the race. We've had Peter Brock go out of the race, and that puts Gracie up front and drawing away from the second dealer team car.
And Jim Richards, Terry Shield coming into the pits as well in another Mazda RX-7, so not a good race for them. The car slowing as the flags wave to warn people that there's an obstruction ahead and there's a car passing. A lot of action going on, and Gracie finds himself in the midst of some fairly thick traffic. Has to slow down. Now he'll give the car a squirt down the straight. Alan Grice, who put his name into the Bathurst record books last year by being the first man ever to take a touring car around this circuit at a speed in excess of the old mark of 100 miles per hour. Did a 2 minutes 17.5 in getting pole position and $10,000 for that in Hardy's Heroes last year, but had all sorts of dramas this year. He was trying to pass another car, David Selden, in a Falcon going up the mountain. The two cars touched. Apparently David didn't see him coming behind. They touched, and Grice at 160 went head-on into a concrete wall, damaged the right-hand front of the car, pushed the wheel right back to the driver's feet. The mechanics worked all night with the TAFE engineers up here, the panel-beating groups from various colleges of advanced education. There's Alan Grice, and he can afford to smile at the moment. And the car was repaired. He went out 8th position. There's his record. No wins, as you can see. He got a 2nd last year, a 2nd in 78, and there's no man out there who would more cherish victory in Australia's greater road race than Alan Grice. Former pastry cook from around Cessnock Way, now a full-time professional racing driver, will soon celebrate his 41st birthday, which makes him about the average age among the top liners. More and more, this event is becoming an event for older drivers. We've got, in fact, several of them well above the 50 years of age mark, and quite a few of them still have a fairly good chance in the race. John French, who'll be co-driving with Freddie Gibson, and they're picking up to be up in the top 10.
Well, there's the man at the moment coming through the cutting. Alan Grice leading the James Hardy 1000 at Mount Panorama at Bathurst. We'll be back after this break.
Welcome back to the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst. We're following the man who's in 10th spot, Fred Gibson, the winner here back in 1967, driving the only Nissan Bluebird Turbo still in the race. George Fury behind the pits, but he's been joined by some fairly illustrious company. The news is Peter Brock officially has retired from the race with that engine problem, but he is seeking to join John Harvey in car 25 and take over that car, so Brock may be back in the race. In the meantime, Freddie Gibson, rounding off the top 10, a man who's raced here for many years, almost since the first one 21 years ago, has won once. Love to do it today, but he's got 9 cars to get by, but the way they're falling out, that certainly is on the cards. He has Terry Shield in front of him, but Shield has lost time. He called into the pits, and not only is he lapped, he's being passed again by Fred Gibson in the Nissan Turbo. 1.8-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine in the Bluebird, a model we don't have on sale in Australia. The body the same, it's a Japanese model, but the way things are going with turbos, we can expect to see quite a few turbo cars, particularly from Nissan, on sale in Australia within the next 12 months or so. Well, what a great performer Fred Gibson has been, Gary Wilkinson.
Well, he's got a fantastic record. Fred was born in 1941, you know. That makes him just a little younger than his co-driver, John French, I think. Let's have a look at the stats on Fred Gibson. One of the great gentlemen of Australian motor racing. And as we said, the Bathurst winner. Rolled a car here in 1970 in the rain. Terrifying moment for him. But one of the coolest drivers in the game, and a lot on his shoulders now that teammate George Fury is seemingly out of the race. 05 is out of the race, and the word is that Peter Brock will do a Sandown all over again and will step into car 25, the second dealer team Commodore, at some stage in the day.
Here's Peter Brock now walking into the pit area.
To break the bad news to brother Phil, do you think?
I think so. He's saying, I'll take over, Phil, because there's no sweat, mate.
Or make your own arrangements, big brother.
Larry Perkins there, who looks like he's out of a drive for the day as well, on the right with the glasses, former Formula One driver, a man really whose career was frustrated in Formula One by poor cars. He had the misfortune to drive cars like BRMs at the time when they were just about the bottom of the pack. A man of great talent.
Should also mention that whatever problems George Fury had, he is now being able to come back out onto the track. And Alan Moffat here dicing with Captain Peter Jansen and takes the inside running on Jansen. He's coming up towards the BP cutting once again.
Something loose on the top. Something loose on the top. I think it's just a bit of ornamental strip. It's a bit hard to say. Above the windscreen, doesn't follow it through. It's on the driver's side. Alan is driving a left-hand drive car. You can see it there. It appears to be... it's
like some of the rub.
Yeah, some sort of stripping around the front of the car. Steve Marston, by the way, in the pits. Car 2, Steve Masterton, and the Marston Holmes Ford is in the pits. There's only Dick Johnson left out there among the Falcons who hasn't had trouble.
Well,
and Bobby Morris
does have a small problem. Dick Johnson has a front guard problem, so the masking tape on that hastily prepared car is coming adrift. Let's check the win scoreboard again with the top 10 in the race at this stage, and Alan Grice now the race leader with Rocky, we presume, joining Harvey in 25, so Harv's holding down second place for the boss at the moment. The second STP car number 14, is up into third spot with Garth Wigston at the wheel at the moment, then another Commodore, Cullen and Harrop, then French and Morris, yet another Commodore. By gee, don't they dominate that stage. But now, here's a change. One more Commodore, Jansen and Parsons, and then Alan Moffat moving up into 7th place in the race at this stage. His co-driver, of course, Yoshi Katayama from Japan. Then Gibbo and Frenchie in the Nissan Turbo. I noticed that George Fury is back on the track too. Let's hope that they've sorted out their problems.
Dick Johnson up on the leaderboard in 10th place. And the Marston Holmes car that just has called into the pits was in 9th spot, so he's lost a lot of ground and taken himself from the leaderboard. And side by side, a little bit of joint provocation. Alan Moffat on the inside with the better line. The merry captain, Peter Jansen, on the outside. But he'll follow Alan around.
Car 14, which was in third spot, Garth Wigston is in the pits, the second STP car.
And pointing frantically at the front of the car to the mechanic, something under the bonnet. Alan Moffat just making sure that his line isn't taken by Peter Jansen. In the meantime, down to the pits where Peter Werrett has Peter Brock.
Thanks very much, Evan. Well, a disaster for Peter Brock, undeniably, but he's not out of the race. The question is now, what will you do, Peter, to rearrange your driving schedule?
Yes, John's due in 5 laps now, and I'll hop in and do a 36 lap stint, which is a tank of fuel. then probably Larry and probably Phil, you know, just play it by ear from there on in. But John's car seems to be okay.
So you can use, in fact, all 4 drivers in the one car if you care to?
Yes, we've all cross-ended, yeah. We did that deliberately in case this sort of thing did eventuate, but must admit it was very unexpected. First time I've had any sort of engine trouble for years. And I went at the back straight, noticed I felt something strange actually, and I looked at the oil temperature gauge, and it was slowly climbing. I thought that's a bit strange, so I put it in the top gear and just cruised around the circuit to get back here without destroying it.
What in fact has happened, Peter?
I think it's probably run a bearing or something like that.
Plenty of oil around anyway.
Pardon?
Plenty of oil around.
Yes, there is, that's for sure.
Well, good luck anyway, Peter. I hope when you get back into the car, things work out a little better for you.
Thank you, Peter Werrett. Let's go and have a look who we've got in car number 61 that has spun in probably the worst spot.
Gemini, White and McClure.
Oh, Murray Carter comes in. I think he might be heading for the pits, which was just as well. We had another incident in the pits up the other end where Garth Wixon, going out, drove off with the refuelling can still stuck in the boot and was spraying petrol all the way down the line. But still, the marshal stopped him, took the can out and sent Garth on his way. White is stuck there. Now he's found reverse gear and just gets it offline in time to avoid a few heart attacks by following drivers. He'll probably go in the pits to make sure things are okay, particularly check the tyres in case he flat spotted them.
Another breakdown truck is on its way to the top of the mountain as well. Maybe they're going up to collect that Mazda RX-7 we saw in the wall before. John Bundy and Norman Carr in car number 39. By gee, there's never been so much activity in the pits and cars in walls on the top of the mountain in such an early stage.
And the pits are so crowded. Steve Marston has been there a long time, so there's some mortal problem as far as he's concerned. There are 4 cars in front of us in the pits from our view, looking across, 4 in a row. 4 pits are crowded, and this is the car that carries the hopes now of the Holden dealer team. John Harvey, who has yet to win a race, who will come in what, 4 laps from now and hand over to Peter Brock, who will then do a 30-lap stint. So the hopes of the Holden dealer team rest on the shoulders of the men driving this car, currently running in 2nd spot following Alan Grice, well and truly in the race. They had the foresight to nominate each other as co-drivers for different cars so they could switch over. As you may recall, Peter Brock did this at Sandown, took over the John Harvey car and brought it up from 7th to 3rd place, but they forgot to tell the stewards beforehand what they were doing, and they were subsequently disqualified for not having done their paperwork. They haven't made that mistake this time, and so Peter Brock can take over.
One man that we haven't really mentioned, you know, is Warren Cullen, and with all the action going on around here, he's in 3rd place.
And doing exceptionally well. He's been driving so well this year. Very fast in practice, looking fast and clean. One of the mysteries that we still haven't managed to solve, too, is what happened to the BMW. Maybe we can find out from Peter Werrett, who has Frank Gardner with him.
Well, we're bound to be able to get an answer from the man who knows all the answers. Frank Gardner, what's wrong?
We've got ourselves a tank full of dirty fuel, and we've somehow the other where it's come from, goodness only knows, but it's right through the fuel system into the injector pumps and everything. So we've really got a total strip out in our hands at the moment, and you're just from hero to zero in about 2 seconds flat.
How would you get dirty fuel, Frank?
We have no idea at all. It's right through the system, and we've just got to get rid of it, and we could be in the pit as long as 3/4 of an hour, just getting it right out through the system.
Is it possible that it was deliberate?
I don't really know. You hate to think that the sport's sunk to that level. I can't quite believe it, but, you know, that's the problem.
The BMW was a bit of a dark horse, though, so it is a possibility.
Well, it is a possibility, but you obviously have to tighten up your security or something. But anyway, we're caught out, and there's nothing we can do about it. We're just really out of contention. You can't dump this sort of time this early in a race to go through a fuel system and get it all cleaned and new filters and what have you. It's just hours of work.
So next year, an Alan Bond type security exercise.
Well, I still can't believe that that we've sunk to this level.
I hope not. Back to central commentary point.
Thank you very much. I certainly hope so. I love the phrase by Frank, hero to zero. One man who's gone from 0 to hero in terms of his chances overnight would be Dick Johnson, who, when we saw him go off the course yesterday, we would have thought, right, thank heavens he's alive, but he certainly is out of the race. And in one of the miraculous feats here at Mount Panorama, his crew, the fellows from the TAFE CIG tent, who really have performed miracles with many cars, have rebuilt car 17, turned 9 into 17, repainted it, running on the track and running in the top 10.
Johnson on the move, and so too is the man in the 43 Mazda. We'll take a break and return to the James Hardie 1000 at Bathurst. 1000 from Mount Panorama at Bathurst. And there's Dick Johnson, started from position 10 in the field and still running in 10th spot, made it up to 9th, but that position has been taken away from him by young Harris in the Commodore, who started off at Bathurst with this car, the Ford, but in the deal that took place overnight, Harris stepped out of the car and went to Johnson, and then Harris went to a Commodore for the race. So they're still running quite strongly. Positions in the top 10 at this stage.
Oh, half the flare missing, as you saw there on the front of Dick Johnson's car, as we mentioned earlier, has just disappeared.
It would be affecting the handling of the high-speed parts coming down the straight. His times that Dick have been recording is around 2:28. Just to give you some comparison, we've been timing Alan Moffat, who's been recording 2:21, so he's running about 7 seconds a lap slower than Alan Moffat. But I think Dick Johnson will be happy just to cruise it around, get the feel of the car, see what's right, what's wrong, and maybe when he comes in for a scheduled stop, assuming it all hangs together, do a little bit of tweaking and then take it out and give it a bit of a go. But as we said before, it's a miracle that he's there in the first place. A car that they had to build up overnight. Here's Steve Marston into the pits again. He had a long stop before, another stop for Steve Marston, so that's bad news also for one of the most enthusiastic teams in the business, with probably the best presented car there. Really a beautifully prepared machine, but they've got troubles in their second visit to the pits, and by the rather leisurely way that Steve is bringing the car in, it could be a fairly long stop.
Moffat is in 4th place.
There's Steve Masterton in the pit area. As we mentioned before, car was overheating badly. Crew down quickly to see put the air jacks under the car, so it looks like a long stop for Steve Masterton in the Masterton Homes number 2 car.
Well, talk about 22. Here's number 2. Here's 22, and the man we haven't spoken a lot about, it's Warren Cullen in the Cullen Automotive Industries Commodore, and he's running in 3rd place in the race. Surprised everybody with the tremendous times he turned in qualifying, and he's living right up to it in the race itself.
The man who tried to run with Alan Jones a couple of years ago, and that was an effort thwarted by problems. They never really got going. And Alan, or rather Warren, has had a number of disappointing years, but he's always been in there trying, and maybe this could be the year when he shows just what he can do. Runs his own engineering business in Melbourne. Very enthusiastic, prepared to spend to get the right sort of equipment and to get the car ready, but hasn't enjoyed a lot of good luck. And now, with the race having covered 18 laps, he's up in 3rd spot, following Alan Grice, who has a lead of 8.2 seconds over John Harvey in the Holden dealer team car, then Warren Cullen, and the man behind is Alan Moffat, the man they reckon was foxing in practice, the man they reckon would take the lead about lap 39 or lap 40. I wonder if they were right.
Fred Gibson in the second of the Nissan Bluebirds is now up into 6th place.
Right, they're all moving up a little bit then, or some of those cars though. Where's Dick Johnson? Still back in 10th place. Yes, he's in fact dropped back a couple of spots. We mentioned Andrew Harris being just in front of him. Andrew Harris in the Bendigo entry, car 9, has moved up 2 places ahead of Dick, or Dick has dropped 2 behind him. Warren Cullen, not a well-known figure in motor racing. This is what he looks like. This is what he's done. 6 times a competitor.
His worst moment, yes, I can imagine.
Yes, it's nice to know you've survived something. I'm sure the same sort of thoughts must have gone through Dick Johnson's mind yesterday when he got himself out of the tangle of trees in which he ended up in the green machine.
Good to see Warren Cullen coming back. Took a lot of flack 2 years ago when he tried to do the right thing with Alan Jones here at Bathurst, when Jones, of course, was driving Formula 1 and returned here. They just had a hapless run during the race that year. The car broke down. However, Warren has overcome all that. He's back, he's competitive, and he's in the top 3 at the moment.
And he's still running, which is more than we can say about Murray Carter, who's brought the fuel-injected Mazda Rotary into the pits. Bad luck for Murray, long-time Ford stalwart, but he's in the pits with problems. Well, I think when a race is run as fast as this, you must expect problems. It's not just a question of poor reliability among some cars. They're being driven at a merciless pace. They're being thrashed. Enormous pressures on transmission, on fuel systems, on lubrication, all sorts of things. And you're going to get troubles when speeds are so great. Fastest times ever in practice this year. If you look down the entry list, you had to go down to car number 17 among the qualifiers before you found a car that had only equaled last year's race record. So there were 16 cars better than Peter Brock's lap record last year in practice this year. That's how much faster they're going. And this is one man who's really surprised us all by the speed with which he's going, just zipping past one of the Mazdas in car number 51, Tony Mulvihill. Sees the tail end of this car, Warren Cullen's Commodore, as he goes down through the bends. Steve Marston still in the pits, another long stop there. No one in a great hurry to try and fix it. It looks as though they're in the last moments of the race for this car. They're an enthusiastic team, but there does come a point when you have to say, OK, is it worth going on? And I think they must be very close to that now in the Masterton Holmes pit. Bad luck for the fellow who began his career by winning the Rookie of the Year award. He's going out, and in the meantime, John Harvey is coming in. Whether Marston's going on the track or to the back, we'll see.
I think he's going out on the track.
And we're looking for a driver change. With John Harvey scheduled to come into the pits as Masterton goes out and hand over to Peter Brock.
Moffat has lost a place after being up to 4th. He's been taken by Bobby Morris. Morris now in 4th place. Moffat back to 5th. Grice still the race leader. Harvey
drove past that time and just shook his head to the pits, saying he was taking another lap or so. This is the great dice that we've been following between Alan Moffat and Bob Morris.
Moffat's back in front of Morris again, so he's back to 4th spot as they go out of Hell Corner and up Mountain Straight.
Bill O'Brien from Canberra in the pits in car 26. Another Falcon with a problem. Under the car, you can see them looking down there. Bit hard to tell what it is because some are looking at the back and some are looking at the front. All we can be sure of is it's under the car. There's Bobby Morris. There's Alan Moffat. Moffat in front now. And Bob Morris on the way up Mountain Straight says, I'd like to get by. Moffat won't let him. They've got a car to pass. This will be a bit dicey as the two of them go swinging through.
They've swapped places a couple of times already. So it's on in earnest here.
Bob Morris, probably the finest sprinter we have here. He can really wind himself up for one superb effort over a short distance. But he won the race in 1976 with John Fitzpatrick, so he has the form to win the race, but he hasn't been driving for 12 months. In fact, it wasn't until the final practice session, just 15 minutes before, that he was put into this car in place of Alan Brown, a magnificent effort by the man who runs the Recar organisation to join Rusty French. After that point, the car was only qualifying about 35th place. But then he put it onto the grid among the leading 10, and across the top of the mountain, it's fairly obvious that the Moffat Mazda is quicker through the bends there as they go sweeping around through Castrol Curve, passing some cars towards Skyline, down over the top and down through the twisting bends. Now let's see what Bob Morris can do about catching the little rotary as they come through the bends and down the long straight, which should favour the legs, the long legs of the Commodore.
It's amazing how much ground Moffat takes out over the top of the mountain, isn't it?
Well, they're close, certainly heading up to the top, and now from this point onwards, nice place to park on a Sunday at Bathurst. And there's the dice that continues, still looking for 4th and 5th spot between Alan Moffat and Bob Morris. We'll see just how long the legs of the Mazda RX-7 are heading down Conrod Straight. Morris should theoretically start to pick him up from this point on, but he'll probably be outbraked by the Mazda. Closing a little.
Yes, he certainly is going a little faster, but the lighter weight of the Mazda should enable it to brake later, but Bob Morris is making up for it by just braking later. That's just what he himself chooses to do. You can see the car weaving under brakes. He made up some ground.
Okay, let's go to the pits now with the pit stop. John Harvey out like a flash. In goes Brock. A little taller driver, Brock, and they have to do some adjustments here in a hurry.
Well, they would have had good practice because it was Philip Brock that was going to take over, and Philip is about a foot and a half taller than Peter. Down to the pits to Peter Werrett.
Right here with Peter Brock jumping into the car now, being strapped in. In fact, what they're doing as well is taking on Peter Brock's full set of tyres from the 05 car, which is interesting. Brock obviously has a preference for those cars, those tyres. The pit stop is finished now, and he's away. Peter Brock's back in the race, and we'll see how the Holden Marlborough dealer team cars go from here.
Thank you, Peter Werrett. And a big cheer comes up from the spectators along pit straight as they're informed that Peter Brock has taken over from John Harvey in the 25 car. Back to this dice, and it continues again. Alan Moffat can't shake the man behind him, who's a former Bathurst winner and quite a card.
Moffat is in third place at the moment, being challenged by Bobby Morris in the Commodore. Grice leads, Cullen is second. Harvey talking with Larry Perkins about the car. 25 is the last card they've got in the pack. They've lost 0-5, but of course Brock is still there.
And what a dice going on here, Gary. It was obvious that the Commodore was faster up the mountain. It's been obvious in past laps that, oh, one of the Capris in the pits. I thought he was into the wall, but he just stopped with a case of the steams. That's Laurie Hazelton's car, the Capri. A massive dose of overheating, I would say. You see the water sprayed across the circuit. Well, this time Bob Morris stayed a lot closer to Alan Moffat as they came down through the S's and around the Forest Elbow. Let's see whether he can make up some ground. He showed last time that he was quite prepared to leave his braking almost to the suicidal point where the car was fishtailing. This time he is a lot closer and may in fact pass Moffat. He has the legs. Can he outbrake him? It'll be side by side down into the braking area. Bob Morris on the outside, Alan Moffat on the inside with the right line. But Morris is going to persist. There's no braver driving at Bathurst today. But no, Moffat is going to shoulder him out of the way, and it'll be Moffat who will take the corner.
He'll cut back on the inside, Morris, if he can pull it. And Alan Moffat, number 43, the Stuyvesant Mazda, having all sorts of trouble trying to shake Morris, who says, I was shot on the inside. Couldn't pull it that time. They come into the left-hander. And once again, Morris will hound Moffat all the way to the top of the mountain. Well, this scrap is continuing in middle field. Meanwhile, up front, it's Alan Grice still in front. We'll take a break and then return to the James Hardy 1000 from Mount Panorama.
There's Jimmy Richards on the track in the BMW after an episode in which it was claimed they had dirty fuel. Was it dirty work? Well, the suspicion is there, I guess, but why? Gee, the car is back and cowering, and I mean, hold on, because this is the ride of your life. Sensational speed.
That gives you a totally new concept. Sitting at home across Australia, watching the James Hardy 1000. We've had you inside the car since 1979. Now we've taken you outside the car. The picture's coming to you from the periscope camera we call Race View, and it's situated 10 centimetres just above the top of the BMW. We lose our chopper sequence down at the bottom part of the mountain. We go back to this scrap that's continuing, and guess who's still dicing? Alan Moffat in the 43 Mazda, and Bobby Morris, the comeback boy, in number 4, driving the John Sands Commodore with Rusty French in this race. And they're coming up to put a lap on a slower car. So where this car stays on the circuit is critical for Moffat and for Morris. The car stays out of harm's way. Good driving there, sensible driving. Moffat makes no mistake about it. Any little gap that's open in the field, he's taking. We've got a slower RX-7 just in front of Moffat here. But Moffat goes down on the inside, and Morris clings to him like a wet blanket.
Right now, it's Grice in the lead, Cullen second. Moffat is third under challenge from Bobby Morris. Oh, hello, what's up here? Just fuel?
Fuel, regular pit stop for Dick Johnson. He's still out there running. The Carby is obviously performing, because he hasn't had an unscheduled pit stop, and consulting here with his mechanics, George Shepherd.
Seems a little bit slow, though. Fuel is in. Fuel is in, yes, that's right. Tyres, they're looking at that flare where it's been torn away. Is it a problem?
Okay, back to Bob Morris, who has got around the outside of Alan Moffat. And this scrap will continue again. Here's Moffat, has some of the beating on a flare on the inside of the front guard. We'll try and pick that up for you as they head up to Castrol. As you can see, a little of the beating has broken away there on the outside. Nothing to worry about. Whether or not there's some contact there with the Morris car, we'll have to wait and see.
Held up slightly there by car 53, although I guess it's got the legs up the mountain. And that's the Commodore of Fred Geisler and Ralph Radburn.
This is the periscope camera view out the back of the BMW. Jim Richards heading down, but I would think has problems. I would think so if he's being passed by a Ford Capri on the outside. We'll go back and stay on this because we have a slower car now between Bob Morris and Alan Moffat.
Talking about Ford Capris, Mike, car 55, Barry and Glenn Seaton has been in for a very quick pit stop. Didn't seem to be anything untoward with the car. They were out again very quickly, and they are the leaders in the 3-litre class.
And whether or not Moffat's strategy is to sit back just a little off Bob Morris and let him wear out the Commodore, we'll wait and see. Here's Alan Moffat, an outside run. Coming down the dipper. There's Morris going through after dispensing with the slower car. Moffat goes through, and followed by Alexander, who would be a lap down on them. Conrod straight comes up again. Bobby Morris. With a few cars still to pass, heads down the straight. There's Alan Moffat right behind.
BMW back in the pit. Obviously still a miss after the dirty fuel problem. Meantime, almost unnoticed, Alan Grice in car 6, the STP Commodore, has opened up a lead of 20.9 seconds now over Warren Cullen. Bobby Morris in 3rd spot. Alan Moffat is 4th. And what now his claims earlier that he wasn't in the race, that he was outgunned.
In with George Fury, who has been able to come back onto the racetrack. There's our race cam situated in the Nissan Turbo. Shows you just how relaxed George is.
Time to flex his fingers. I guess they'd get pretty cramped after holding on for 163 laps. Not that they've gone that far yet, but holding on around this circuit, especially across the top. Pictures being linked up through the Prudential chopper. Of course, we've got 2 choppers in the air today. The 7 chopper bringing you great aerial pictures, and the pictures out of Race View and Race Cam being linked through the Prudential chopper.
Goes beneath the Hardy Bridge. There's the crowd off to the right on pit straight. And across the strike up now to the left-hander at Hell Corner. Out of Hell Corner, uses the outside ribbon now, pulls back to the centre of the track, heading up to GTX Bend.
1 hour gone, 25 laps completed in the great race of 1983. And Mike, I don't think there has ever been so much activity in the first hour of the race in any 3 years put together.
I tend to agree. There's more action in the pits in the first 10 laps than we've seen in the past 3 James Hardy 1000 races. Here's George working away, only a small man.
Doesn't say much either. A bit like Jimmy Richards in that respect. But his total concentration behind the wheel. Knows how to drive very hard indeed, but how to nurse the machinery as far as it will possibly go. The camera pans round and gives you the view across the top. Look at the people lining the fence there. Flag marshals looking on. The Nissan fans happy to see this man back on the track after an unscheduled pit stop, after only 1 lap with a problem. He's back out, but well back in the field. But thank goodness he's there, because we're getting these great pictures as he comes round down off the top of the mountain now. Down towards the S's and the Dipper. Tailing out down through Forest Elbow and onto the top of Conrod Straight. Around the motorcraft entry.
Well, there's an interesting shot.
Yep, the Barber Prudential Falcon with the other race cam camera.
There's 2 race cams operating in this leg of Conrod Straight. Johnson and Fury pulling to the outside of him, switches back, and away behind goes Dick Johnson. The race continues with Alan Grice still out there in front and doing it nicely. Shot of Conrod Straight as we hone in on Peter Brock.
Bobby Morris in 2nd place. He's taken Warren Cullen. Moffat now still sitting in 4th, so Morris is doing an absolutely sensational job out there after walking in as a tourist on Friday and picking up a drive. Brock in car 25, out and circulating with 0.5, pushed off behind the pit, circulating in 2:21s at the present time. But there are others on the track in front of him who've been going a shade faster, so there's work to do yet for the defending champion here at Mount Panorama. The man behind the wheel of 25 is Peter Brock, and trying hard because he's in 5th place on the track at the moment, but well down on the race leader. Alan Grice will pick it up when we return to Mount Panorama.
Welcome back to Bathurst. I'm in the pits now with a thunder of cars behind. And the information about George Fury is that he had gearbox trouble. Nothing to do with the motor, but the car lost 2nd gear. They spent 13 laps in the pits. George is out there driving like the devil, should I say driving like a fury, to try and make up some lost ground. But 13 laps is too much, but it won't diminish the way he tries to drive. In Dick Johnson's case, he came in with a flat battery, of all things. What a strange thing to happen after all the mechanical problems in putting the car together overnight. And as we watch from the window of George Fury's car going down Conrod, let me run through a few of the problems that have afflicted other cars. Ron Dixon in car 21, the RX-7, had a broken Watts linkage. That's part of the rear suspension. He's out of the event. Car 20, the Falcon of Joe and Graham Moore, a loose radiator hose, back in the race. Car 45, the Commodore of Gary Hinton, the head gasket blew. They're trying to fix it. Car 13, the Commodore of Greg Symes, steering troubles, trying to fix that. Car 37, the RX-7 of Terry Shield. The car was unstable. He came in to see what it was, thought maybe it was the axle. Car 36, the RX-7 of Jerry Burgess and Roger Mandeville, had a fuel problem. They came in to try and fix it. Car 14, the Commodore that Garth Wixon brought in, a plug lead was loose on the motor. They fixed that. Car 47, Brian Callahan's Falcon, it broke the lower control arm in the front suspension. Dick Johnson coming into the pits again. We'll follow him here. Peter Werrett in place. Let's see what happens. But Dick coming into the pits right alongside us. You can hear the shattering noise of the V8. They're refueling. He switches off. It may just be a scheduled stop. 2 churns of fuel going in. A lot of work going under the bonnet, though. It's the battery. They're going to replace it. They sent Dick out while they got a spare battery ready, and the crew now have a new battery to put in. Fancy, a flat battery in a motor race. But if that's all that goes wrong with them in this amazing James Hardy 1000, Dick Johnson can count himself to be a fairly lucky man, I would think. They're just still trying to uncouple the battery, very firmly locked in place, of course. The trick here is to work quickly without fumbling, without making mistakes. Tremendous pressure on the crew, and bear in mind that none of them have had any sleep since Friday night. Been up all night rebuilding this car. Dick Johnson had a few hours. It'll be a fairly troubled sleep. These men haven't slept for a long time, and they've worked hard all week. They've got the replacement battery ready to go in. It's on the right-hand front corner of the car, still working to release the other one. It's beneath a catch tank for the radiator overflow. The engine compartments, of course, of these cars are very special. And it's not easy to get that battery up. They're still unbolting the clamps that hold it in place.
Evan, they might be having problems there, and he might not have the fastest lap time, Dick Johnson, but he has been the fastest man on the track today, clocked at 260 kilometres per hour down Conrod Straight.
260 kilometres? Yeah. Great pace. The new battery going in now. Dick staying in the car. No one's bothered to clean the windscreen. He must be getting a dreadful view out of it because it is absolutely spattered with insects. But they're all focused on changing this battery, the problem that he has. Now one of the men walks towards the front of the car. So Dick's still in the pits. And Gary, what price now that Peter Brock can come back? What is he, in 5th place at the moment?
Yes, that's right. He's in 5th. There's a huge dice going on for 2nd spot at the moment between Bobby Morris and Warren Cullen. Alan Grice still 20 seconds clear at the head of the race. Moffat slotted in 4th, and then Brock in 5th place in 0.5. Dick Johnson, impatient, wants to get going.
I think at this stage, Dick would be only too happy to finish the race. They're taking the harness, unbuckling the harness while they do the stop over there. Bitterly disappointed for a battery to go flat during the James Hardy 1000 here at Bathurst. Here's Warren Cullen, car number 22. He's been dicing here with Bobby Morris. Morris running in 2nd place, 20 seconds behind the race leader, Alan Grice. And right on his bumper is, of course, Warren Cullen.
They've dropped Moffat off quite considerably, haven't they?
Well, whether or not Moffat's now conserving, it would be
a wise move on his part.
A wise move, and told by the pit crew that really, if you stick around out there long enough, and they might all drop out in front of you.
Evan just ran through that huge list of problems that various entries have had. There are only 13 cars on the leading lap at the present time out of a starting field of 57.
It is quite incredible. There's Dick Johnson and Kevin Bartlett hopping into the car to do a driving stint. Not the car they started out planning on racing in, the James Hardy. Here's the scrap again. Bob Morris, Warren Cullen just sitting in behind. They come down to the end of Conrod Straight.
Cullen braking later, trying to get alongside, but he's off in the dirt there. He's lost ground. Slowed considerably. He's allowed Morris to get away from him by about 15 car lengths.
Back behind them, Terry Shield, that you can see, Gene Cook and the TAA Mazda RX-7.
Well, let's check the situation with an hour plus gone in the great race, the James Hardy of 1983.
The 1983 James Hardy 1000 started at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Getting away smartly was Peter Brock in the number 05 car with George Fury, dropping into second place, followed by the second of the Marlborough dealer team Commodores, driven by John Harvey. Jim Richards made a lightning start, moving to fourth at the completion of the first lap. As they headed up Mountain Straight for the first time, Brock was already starting to put an edge over the second place driver in the field. Brock increased that edge over George Fury. Harvey still held third, Richards was fourth, and they were then followed by Captain Peter Jensen in the Cadbury Schweppes Commodore. 2 laps down, Brock still extending his lead. Race View, the new concept from Channel 7 in this year's telecast, unveiled for the first time, but there were to be problems for the JPS BMW. Fuel problems. The Kraft Smith car were causing quite a storm, smoke pouring off the outside front wheel. Then, of course, the shock of the race. Peter Brock in 05 came into the pits, unexpected. One motor expired and the 05 car out. The Manson entry got caught in the rough up the top of the mountain. Brock's car, it was internal. They moved it behind the pit wall, and Peter Brock in 05 was out of the race. The Bundy car then hit the wall, the RX-7 at the top of the mountain. Bundy was able to get out of the car, and meantime, Alan Grice in the STP Commodore was able to take over the lead. Then, of course, the driver change. John Harvey came in, and the team boss, Peter Brock, stepped into the 25 car to return to the racetrack in his quest for a 7th win in the James Hardy 1000 here at Mount Panorama at Bathurst. The dice between Alan Moffat and Bob Morris. It has roared all day long. Moffat would take over 5th place, only to be passed again by Bob Morris heading up the mountain in the Commodore.
Watching the race from the pit area is Dick Johnson. You've just handed over to Kevin Bartlett. Was it a flat battery that brought you into the pits?
Yes, Evan. It wouldn't rev over about 5,500, 6,000 because the battery was that flat and just not enough current for the ignition. But the old gearbox is getting a bit tired, I think, because the gearbox pump's not working because it's electric. And the gearbox oil overheats and you have trouble selecting gears. But we'll just put another battery in and we'll just see what happens.
Will this battery go flat? Do you know what caused the first one to go?
Well, obviously there's a problem in the electric somewhere that's not charging the battery, so we'll just have to hope that we can feed us batteries all day.
You're in for a hard day as well as a hard night by the look of it.
Oh, well, that's the way it goes, Evan, I suppose. You know, my boys have worked so darn hard all night, and I'd like to thank them very much for that, and thank our sponsors for everything they've done, and all the people that, you know, stood 3 deep outside the tent all night.
Yes, that was amazing. But you're still in the race, and that's something that a lot of people can't say. Can you recall a James Hardy 1000 where so many people have had so much trouble so early?
No, I can't, Evan, but I suppose the way things are going these days, anything can happen. And, like, there's still a lot of cars out there that are running pretty hard, and And it's about time, I suppose, somebody else had a fair shake at it.
Well, this is a view from your car with Kevin Bartlett driving. What's it like to handle this new car you built overnight?
Well, actually, it's such a dog. I think we should have tied it to the fence because I tell you what, it handles like a bucket of wheat. It's really bad. It's bumping out everywhere. Poor old KB, we were working his heart out here.
What did you tell him? What instructions did you give him before he set off?
Well, I said, mate, just hang on to the gear lever and hang on to the steering wheel. I said, because it's like a Mack truck after a while. But, you know, he's just taking it easy and letting everyone go by. You know, because around, especially this part of the circuit here, it's really bad. You know, the steering just gets very heavy. Apparently, one of the wheels must be rubbing up on the inner guard somewhere, which forces the wheel to bind up. But we intend to get to the finish one way or the other.
Well, I think it's a miracle you're in the race, Dick, isn't it?
Well, the one thing I'm pleased about, we weren't the first ones to go out.
Do you think you can last the race out?
Well, sure, give it a good try, Evan.
Bobby Morris is going well, isn't he?
Yes, I suppose he's going pretty well. That's a pretty good car. That's one of the old Alan Brown cars from last year. And there's no reason why it shouldn't go well.
It must put you in a funny sort of frame of mind when you, who worked for a year on your entry to come here and race, see a man like Bob Morris who turned up here as a spectator, and with 15 minutes to go in the last practice session, suddenly finds himself behind the wheel of a very competitive car.
Well, you've got to be lucky sometimes, I suppose. I think our turn's coming one day.
Prophetic words from Dick Johnson in the pit area with Evan Green. We're following Bobby Morris. He's on the charge in the 83 James Hardy 1000. We'll take a break and then return to Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
In the great race, the James Hardy 1000, Alan Grice is the leader with 33 laps completed. He has a call of 18.5 seconds over Bobby Morris in the John Sands Commodore number 4. Another Commodore follows in third place, Warren Cullen, car 22, and then in fourth place, Alan Moffat in the Mazda RX-7, the man who started from 14th spot on the grid and is now running fourth. Of course, there have been some casualties to help him up the list. 05, Peter Brock, one of them, and Brock is back out on the track in car number 25, the second of the dealer team vehicles.
Well, Grice looking good at this stage, still 18 and a bit seconds in front, was up to 20 before, but I think Bob Morris might be closing just a little bit. Morris is definitely the talking point of the James Hardy 1000 so far. The way that he got the start has already been well detailed by both Gary and by Evan. But to think that this man that has not driven in the Hardy race for 2 years has come back and is running in second place, 18.5 behind Alan Grice. And there's Gricey in the number 6 STP Commodore, doing it nicely. We'll be heading towards a pit stop very shortly, I would feel. But at this stage, everything running nicely for the STP team.
In the 3-litre class, Mike, we've got a trifecta of Capris heading that particular class. Car number 59 in the lead at the moment is Laurie Nelson and Peter Jones, followed by car 55. That's Seaton and Son, and then car 64, Les Gross and Alan Camp. Capri 1, 2, 3 in the 3-litre class. 17.3 seconds by G. The margin is closing up there on each lap now. Grice the leader, but Morris, pushed hard by Cullen, is moving very close, or much closer indeed.
Let's take a look now, courtesy of Wynn's products, of how they're placed. In front, of course, Alan Grice and co-driver Colin Bond in the Commodore in first place. Bobby Morris at the wheel at the moment of car number 4, and Rusty French in second. Warren Cullen and Ron Harrop third in the Commodore. Then Alan Moffat and Katayama in the Mazda RX-7. And then back behind them, John Harvey and Peter Brock battling back through the field. That's the top 5, courtesy of Wynn's Automotive Products.
All those computer switches clicking down at Texas Instruments, just to keep tabs on who's where and what they're doing in the James Hardy 1000, the great race of 1983, as we take an aerial view of race leader Bobby Morris across the top of the mountain. This is the car that he put into the wall on Friday after an encounter with another vehicle. Took a bit of rebuilding overnight. They got it out for Hardy's Heroes. They qualified well, and he sees himself as race leader.
Lap 34 now being completed. We expect Alan Grice to head to the pits on lap number 40. This stage still 17.3 seconds ahead of Bob Morris. Warren Cullen is in third place. So Commodores 1, 2, 3, and then Alan Moffat up to 4th place.
The teammate car has been in the pits, in fact, I think for about the second time. That's car number 14, Steve Harrington and Garth Wigston. Wigston out of the car, and Harrington now behind the wheel of the second STP vehicle. Down Conrad to click off one more lap. 17.3 seconds, Grice in the race lead. From the hard charging, Bob Morris, Warren Cullen, and Alan Moffat. 11 cars only now on the front running lap.
We've got oil all over the racetrack. Here comes Grice. There's an oil flag out where a car has just dropped oil over the circuit. That's why you can see on the approach of that corner, and the offending car is parked off to the right, heading up Mountain Straight. The hood is up. I think it'll need about 8 pints to fix that problem. Meantime, Grice has been able to stretch that lead, and Grice in a very good situation at this moment, because when he does hand over the car, it'll be to Colin Bond.
Moffat has just taken Cullen going out of pit straight and on the way up the mountain. So Moffat now in 3rd place. It's Grice, Morris, Moffat, Cullen now 4th.
Grice coming up to the cutting. Heads out now on the trip across the top of Mount Panorama. Bobby Morris, as Gary mentioned, still in 2nd. Alan Moffat now moving to 3rd. Warren Cullen down a spot. And Peter Brock now at the wheel of car number 25, moving up into 5th place. Taking you up on a ride around the mountain, courtesy, of course, of Racecam, as they pass the Seaton Capri, the father and son combination of Barry Seaton, one of the most experienced drivers in this race, and son Glenn Seaton. Looking out the back of the Nissan Turbo, George Fury at the wheel. Panning back around as we follow this group of cars up to the top of the mountain. And we'll study the lines by Fury over this part of the course. In the meantime, Alan Moffat, as we've mentioned, has made a move into 3rd place. So his pit stop is also going to be critical. Closing only 21 seconds. The time difference between the race leader, Alan Grice, back to Alan Moffat in 3rd place.
Well, you'll remember just 8 or 10 laps back, we had Moffat dueling with Grice for 4th and 5th spot. With Morris, rather. Morris up in 2nd place now. And Moffat, after seeming to slip back temporarily, is making another charge himself. Under the bridge, under brakes. Left-hand drive, this Mazda RX-7, car number 43.
Here's Alan Moffat once again, across the line. Warren Cullen, not that far back behind him. It's been passed by Moffat. Bobby Morris probably 200 metres ahead of Alan Moffat as they head up Mountain Straight. We're on lap 36 of the James Hardy 1000 for 83. Heading up now for the run to GTX. There's Moffat starting to close appreciably now on Bob Morris. Picking up on George Fury, dicing here with the Wigston Harrington, the 2nd STP car, number 14.
Bit hard to pick, isn't it? That and Grice's car, they're like peas in a pod.
They certainly are. Little Nissan Turbo running beautifully now. As Evan mentioned before, a gearbox problem put them into the pits for a number of laps. But George Fury's back out in the racetrack and starting to hound a lot of these V8 drivers.
Because there are 2 Nissan Turbos in the race, identical, out of the same team as well. And if you don't pick the number right off, you can't tell the difference between them. Moffat's got 2 Mazdas in the race, identical. You can't pick the difference between them. The dealer team Commodores, well, 05's out of it now, but by gee, they're almost identical anyway. It can be pretty hard to keep track. Thank heavens for Texas Instruments and the Win scoreboard.
Yes, they certainly make the covering of this race a lot easier.
Just just trying to work out who some of the people are, with a number of fathers and sons, husbands and wives, and brothers in the race also.
George Fury down through the gears.
You can see how it's done at breakneck speed across the top of Mount Panorama.
George busy at work in the Nissan Turbo. Good on you, George. George is relaxing a little bit there, just flexing the fingers.
Yeah, he must have the radio on. He's tapping his hand on the wheel. Singing to himself, I guess.
Follow George down Conrod Straight. There's Terry Finnegan and the Leeds car, number 10. It's also running a little back in the pack. Signals going out here to some of the drivers, and only a couple of laps away from the anticipated pit stop by Alan Grice.
The other STP car's back in the pits again, the Harrington car. This is about the third or fourth time that it's been in, so I don't think they're going to be terribly competitive in the race from here on. Race cam in the number 15 Nissan Bluebird with George Fury at the wheel, and I know he's pretty busy, but we might endeavour to get a word with George Fury if he can hear us. George Fury, can you hear us? I would think not. You can hear the high-pitched whine in the car there, and obviously some outside interference preventing an audio link, but the pictures are there and you can see them for yourselves.
Okay, so much for the run through the top part of the mountain as we come on to Conrod Straight. There's still plenty of interest left in this race with Alan Grice due in shortly for a pit stop, and Alan Moffat still on the move. We'll take a break, then return live to Mount Panorama. 38 laps completed, and here comes Alan Grice into the pits, and he'll be handing over to co-driver Colin Bond. Got a wall of cars in there, but here comes Grice in number 6. Let's see how quick the pit stop is as we start our timer. Bond trying to help Grice out of the car.
Their lead was 16.8 seconds when they went into the pit. They've now lost the lead. Morris has gone past.
Still working on the changeover there.
Moffat has gone past. Brock has gone past in 25.
Let's go down now to Peter Werrett.
Changed both offside tyres in this car while it was in the pits, and very quickly too, but there is a slight delay here for some reason I'm not quite sure about. They are having trouble getting started. There it goes, it's fired up. Just simply that it would not start again. It's that simple. Now they've got a wheel and a car in the road. They won't be able to get out of the pits very quickly. This is taking too long, this exercise. Colin's ready to go, but difficulty moving there. Tyres all over the place here, no room to move. Go Colin. And he's away. In just a moment, we'll see if we can have a quick word with Alan Grice.
Thank you very much, Peter Werrett. Well, that took longer than they expected, but Colin Bond has taken over the driving chores in the STP number 6 car. And, of course, Bob Morris, at this stage, because of that pit stop, is now leading the 83 James Hardy 1000.
He should be leading Alan Moffat, but I haven't sighted Moffat. I may have missed him on that lap around there trying to keep track of the Grice pit stop. But on the board, and to our knowledge, it is Moffat in second place at the present time. Third place held down by Peter Brock. Remember, he's now driving in the second dealer team car number 25. Gary Rogers is fourth in car number 11. He's out there and playing it very safe, Gary Rogers. Normally a real up-front hard charger, but driving a very wise race today. Cullen has been in, pitted, fueled, changed tyres, so he's dropped back a little. He's now in sixth place after dueling for the second and third spots earlier.
There's the Kevin Bartlett, who has been well, the car certainly has been a frequent visitor to the pits. As we pick up now on...
Moffat goes through, and I think Grice is coming into the... not Grice, Bobby Morris is in the pit, so Moffat is the race leader.
Moffat has gone to the race lead as Morris has pulled off to go into the pits. Let's go to the pit area now to Peter Werrett.
Alan Grice, race leader. How's the car?
The car's very good. The tyres were hanging up pretty well. They were starting to get a little bit slidey, but you'd expect that after that many laps. The engine is particularly good, actually. It's running about 90 degrees this sort of day. You couldn't get any better than that.
Alan, there's been a few changes to forward running positions that might have caused you to change your game plan. Have you made any modifications to the way you're going to race this race?
Well, you're dead right. The way they unfold is very much decided on the day. We thought Rocky would get away and get his lead to be so hard to pull back. In fact, I got through the pack a little earlier than I thought, and I was actually pulling him in when he ran into his problem. I think we're all using a little more brakes than we thought today, and maybe even a little bit more fuel, so I think there's a lot of interest there.
Alan, good luck. Hope it all goes well for you.
Thank you, Peter Werrett, and to Alan Grice. Well, on the racetrack, car number 43, taking the lead away on lap number 39, and last year, on lap 39, it was Peter Brock who put a lap on Alan Moffat.
All the top drivers here in the last couple of days have said, don't take any attention of what's happening on the track in time trials with Moffat. Take notice of what happens after 40 laps of the race.
Good
after
guy.
40 laps,
I think
this
maybe
man's in front.
I think your betting board might have been correct. There's Alan Moffat, number 43, the RX-7 Mazda, heading down Conrod Straight. Out in front, Bob Morris has called for his pit stop. That now puts
Brock in second place.
Peter Brock to second place.
Gary Rogers third, and the number 6 STP car with Colin Bond at the wheel is now in fourth place, having made their pit stop, so Bondy is well placed.
Down to the end of Conrod Straight. Alan Moffat, little whine of the Mazda RX-7, leading one more lap.
Do you recall that self-deprecating shrug during the interview with Evan Green on the pit? On the grid?
Yes. It's all been well planned, make no mistake. Everyone who was prepared to write off Alan Moffat as being outgunned, out-marshalled and outpowered
never
by V8 equipment. Well, we all knew that would happen in the opening 5 or 10 laps. However, the longer this race goes, the more competitive Alan Moffat's going to be at Mount Panorama. Bob Morris making a very, very long pit stop, rejoining the field now. There's the man in front, Alan Moffat.
No driver change there either. Bobby Morris still at the wheel of the John Sands Commodore number 4 as he rejoins the circuit on the way up Mountain Straight. And in time, just about reaching the top of the mountain, race leader Alan Moffat. Foxing or not, this man, you just cannot ignore his determination, his absolute faith in this car, and the reliability of this car.
23 seconds is the gap from Alan Moffat in 43 to number 25, Peter Brock, in the second dealer team car. Looks like they're waiting on a pit stop coming up shortly for the second of the Stuyvesant Mazdas. And that, of course, will be Greg Hansford to pass over to Gary Walden. Meantime, Alan Moffat heads along Conrod Straight again. I would think would start to maybe increase his lead So it's going to have to be a very, very lightning pit stop, as we expect it to be on the part of the Moffat team.
Race cam again. The Toshiba Commodore entry. You can see in front of George Fury at the present time. Jim Keogh. This is the car you saw sensational footage of in timed practice, which went off at the bottom of Conrod Straight, speared across the grass, through the fence, almost took John Harvey as it rejoined the circuit at the bottom. It's been fixed. It's in the race.
Jim Keogh and George Fury coming up. There you can see the difference between a fairly strong running Commodore V8, but Fury just pulls him in under the player bridge, points to him to move on the inside. Good thinking there on the part of Keogh, and George acknowledges back with a wave. Not too much in it though, was it? They come along pit straight one more time.
Amazing that they've got time for the nicest